Hey everybody, I'm hoping that you guys are being able to enjoy your weekend, and I want to thank you for those that are joining me today, and thanks to people that have been out there helping me with phone banking. This is the second in what we're hoping to do as weekly live town halls to talk about some of the policy issues that we're facing and what legislators can and should be doing about it, and the things that I would like to see as your next state senator. Last week, we talked a little bit about healthcare and the coronavirus and the different responses that the federal, state, and local governments have had to that. And today, I want to talk a little bit about education because I know with the schools being closed, there's a lot of concerns about what's going on and what's happening. So first, we'll talk about what's happening in the federal government, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's happening at the state level. At the federal level, what we are seeing is that Secretary DeVos has agreed to waive the standardized testing requirements for our schools and the ones that have been affected by the virus. States have to apply for the waiver and the exemption. However, many of you already know Pennsylvania has canceled all of their assessments for this school year, and that the Pennsylvania Department of Education is taking the necessary steps to apply for that waiver. But there's another piece to all of this that has become very interesting, and that is that the Secretary of Education may be given a slightly different power, and it has to do with um, disability rights. Those of you that don't know, I did a lot of disability advocacy work when I was in law school, and it's something that I've taken a very keen interest in continuing to be a voice about. And what is being proposed is really quite upsetting as somebody, not that is an advocate for those rights, but then as somebody that knows people that have children. I have friends that have children that rely on the rights that are given to us, the civil rights that are given to us and to our children, the children with disabilities, and all individuals with disabilities. Those civil rights that are given through the laws that have been passed. And what's happening is Senator Mitch McConnell has put out a bill that's a broad $1 trillion, they call it phase 3 stimulus package to address issues stemming from the coronavirus. What's happening is buried deep within that, there is a provision that would allow the Secretary of Education, or requires, the Secretary of Education to develop a report to develop a report, from a report that would detail what, if any, special education obligations she thinks districts should be temporarily freed from or waived from doing or complying with. So it doesn't necessarily make a change to our current law, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act idea, but it does open a watershed of opportunities that could really water down our special education laws and limit the civil rights that have been fought for so hard by advocates, by parents and family members, and by the individuals themselves that want and deserve these rights. It's not something that we should be taking for granted or lightly. So in light of that, at the federal level, what I'm going to say is I'm asking for you guys to reach out to Senator Toomey or Casey and whomever your congressperson is. If you're in the district, it's either Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon or Congresswoman Madeline Dean, and let them know that this is not okay with you, that we shouldn't be rolling back any of our civil rights just because we are in a time of a time of crisis doesn't give us the right or the reason to roll back any of our civil rights from anyone. So I wanted to put that out there, and we're going to talk more about special education as we go through this, because that's really a highlight of issues that are happening within all of this, and that are causes a lot of concern both for parents and students, as well as for administrators and teachers, to know what it is that they're supposed to be doing, or what resources are available for them to really be working on all of these, providing education. So when we move to what's going on at the state level, as I mentioned, Pennsylvania has already canceled all of the assessments this year, the Keystone exams and the PSSAs, and PDEs, also PDE, the Pennsylvania Department of Education. They are not going to penalize any of our school districts that cannot make the 180-day requirement for public education, or whatever the hourly equivalent is. So that's good to know. There are also bills out there to help address what's going to be moving forward with this within this time frame. And the first one is that I want to talk about is a bill by Senator Wayne Langerholk out. I believe he's out from Western Pennsylvania. I'm not positive. So he's got something that he's putting out there. And before we get into this, actually, let's talk about what bills look like when they move through our state legislature. What happens is when a person who is a legislator, a state senator, or representative, they've got an idea, a bill they want to create, policy that they want to implement. It starts with a co-sponsorship memo. That person or those groups of people put out a co-sponsorship memo asking other senators or representatives, depending on which chamber we're in. They put that out there and say, this is what I want to do. This is the intent behind my legislation and what I want to support and the policies I want to put out there. After a certain period of time has passed, when they have the language ready, it then gets assigned a bill number and is created into a bill. So right now we're at stages with just the co-sponsorship memo. It has not turned into a bill yet. There's no official language, but the intent is there. And the intent that Senator Langerholk in his bill has, it seems to be a really strong bill to help support the public school systems and everybody who's touches the public school system. So that includes that similar, 180-day waiver or time or hourly waiver of how much time and energy we've put into educating our children this year. And we want to encourage everybody to, figure out a way to get our children all of the education time that they need, but also being understanding that we are in a time of crisis and it may not come to fruition. It gives a lot of flexibility for how that's achieved, whether it's through using flexible instructional days or removing different requirements on how teachers get their performance ratings, and it's about removing different data pieces from that. There's a lot of support that's coming in there in this bill. But I think one of the things that I really want to highlight out of this bill is that it wants to ensure that all employees of public schools receive the same compensation that they would have had the pandemic not happened. So it's ensuring that our paraprofessionals, our janitorial services, the administrative staff, those people that really support teachers and keep the schools running in the background and may not be necessarily interacting with our children, within the classroom, but in other ways, that it's to ensure that they can continue to receive their payments and that they don't have to look for, another job to pay their own bills. And that ensures continuity as we move forward and make it past this crisis, that when schools open again, teachers will have those same paraprofessionals there to support them. And that's really important, that the teachers continue to have that support staff around them, the administrative staff, whomever it is that really helps them bring this all together That's incredibly important. And I know that, not just those people being worried about paying their bills, but also providing a sense of stability for the teachers as well as they are trying to figure out how we develop learning plans and move back into supporting students once the schools open back up. And it's also provides stability for the students as well, because they will continue to see the same faces that they saw before. And that's incredibly important for a lot of the students, especially because we've gone through such, and are still going through such an uncertain time. Knowing that stability is going to be there can help to balance things for our children. And it does a lot more to help ensure that teachers' retirement plans, as well as anything else that they might be able to, retirement plans and other things like that, because of the pandemic, they're still getting the same amount of money put into those things, and there's still continuity and structure and stability there for all of them. So that is we could go through the bill a little bit longer or a little bit more, but it's very wonky and very, very much, if you know about education policy, it's something you would want to do. And we can certainly drop a link for you then that provides information on that bill so that you'll understand it. The next piece that I want to talk to you about is that students and school districts are each deciding what continuity of learning looks like, and it's different for each school district because of the resources that are available. Specifically, there are a couple of things that are of concern. Online and distance learning, when we think about this, we are thinking about whether or not students have access to the internet. So that's not just thinking about the resources that students in, some of the grossly underfunded school districts like a Norristown or a Philadelphia school district. It's not just thinking about their resources and whether or not those students in that school district have the resources to support moving to an online platform, and whether or not those students have access to resources to move to an online platform. But we also need to think about moving children and moving school districts to a whole other platform of learning when they're in rural areas as well. When we start to think about children that live in very small communities that maybe don't have quality internet or access to quality internet, they might not have cell service where they live, different issues that happen because of just the different availability of technological services and utilities, and whether or not our children in Greene County can access education from a small online platform with their schools, or whether it's our school districts that there are children that just don't have the resources as well to access an online platform. And that's a huge concern. There's another concern about moving everything online, and that concern is how do we address children with disabilities and ensuring that they're getting what their civil rights are, and what is enacted, what is there for them to be able to do. So I talked to you a little bit about the Individuals with Disability Education Act, and what that does is it guarantees the free and appropriate public education for children with learning differences and disabilities. And that's where our civil rights for those individuals really derives from. And right now, the guidance that's coming from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, as well as the Federal Department of Education, is that if you're providing educational services to the general student population, then you have to ensure that you are providing those equal access to those same opportunities to children with disabilities or students with disabilities, and that to the greatest extent possible, each student with a disability is provided with the same special education and related services that's identified in either their IEP, their individualized education plan, or Section 504 plan, which is just another way that we provide guidance and services to individuals with disabilities in the educational system. So with that said, IEP teams can create contingency plans that all parties, including the parents, which most specifically the parents, have to agree to ensure that when there is a disruption like this, there is a continuity of education and services. Many school districts are concerned that they cannot provide a continuity of services. They cannot provide a continuity of education and equal opportunity for their students that have IEPs or have Section 504 plans or any kind of learning difference. They can't do that. They're afraid that if they don't do it, or that the way that they do it may not be enough, and that they will actually be facing civil rights lawsuits because of it and the violations that might come from that. So there are many school districts we're finding that have actually taken a step back and said that they're not providing any required education, online platform education, because they don't know how to help the students with disabilities or with IEPs and ensure that they're doing that in a way that would prevent that would be satisfactory and prevent them from facing any kind of a civil rights violation. So that's what's happening, and I want you to know that it can be done. There are school districts throughout the country who have found a way to do this, to move to an online platform and do it in a way that still continues to provide support for individuals with disabilities. And that, there are online charter schools and online schools in general that have found a way to do this that is satisfactory, that parents are happy with. And while I'm not necessarily a proponent of charter schools, it does say something that, this can be done. And what needs to happen is support from the state to ensure that the schools have what they need. The school districts have the support, and that's funding, that's programming, whatever that is. There are ways that this can be done and that we can support schools as a legislator to do this. Now, where does that come from? We could look to a bill a co-sponsorship memo that's been put out by Senator Andy Dinniman. And what that's doing is allowing school districts to deliver online instruction until the end of the 2019-2020 school year. So schools would be able to allowed and able to move to a completely online platform. But also, he wants to take note that, not all school districts have the means and the capabilities to do this and provide the most appropriate, fair and appropriate public education for all of their students, which of course is inclusive of those within the disability community. And in doing that, they have put instructions into this co-sponsorship memo that they would like to build into this bill that would require the Pennsylvania Department of Education to assist districts that don't have those abilities to help them develop an online plan or an alternate instruction plan for all of their students. So what we've got to do is, if we're going to pass a bill like this, make sure that there's funding and support that can be influxed into the system, and that we have programs and guidance for all of our schools that make sense on how we move from a classroom-based program to an online-based program that still continues to address all of the learning differences that our students face in each of our school districts. So that is what's happening from the state level and from the federal level with education during our time of public health crisis. So I would love to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask about this topic, if there's anything I can do to help you get resources, whether it's to know, to learn more about what's required of your school district, of, what your rights are, or what to be planning for in the near future, let me know, and I'm happy to help. I hope to do this again next week with a different topic, and hope that you guys will be able to join me again. So thank you all for joining me. I appreciate your support, and I hope to continue to touch base with you online and over the phones. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home.